Most people think Viking success was about ferocity, about raids, about sudden violence from the sea, but the deeper reality is less dramatic and far more instructive. The Viking Age did not spread because of reckless aggression. It spread because of logistics, materials science, and a patient understanding of wood, water, and wind. The longship was not simply a vehicle for war, it was an infrastructure system, one so resilient that fragments of it still survive while the kingdoms it harassed, traded with, and sometimes toppled have long since dissolved. The Frankish Empire fractured, Anglo-Saxon England fell and reformed, even the Byzantine world shifted shape. Yet Viking shipbuilding principles endured, influencing medieval naval design and quietly shaping maritime doctrine for centuries. If you want to understand how a relatively small population from Scandinavia projected power across half the known world, you have to start not with the warrior, but with the whole. The strength of Viking ships began in forests managed with intention, not impulse. The durability of Viking ships did not begin at sea. It began decades earlier in carefully used woodlands. Scandinavian shipwrights relied primarily on oak for keels and structural planking, selecting trees with natural curves that matched the lines of a hull. Rather than forcing timber into shape, they searched for grain that already bent in the direction they needed. This detail matters. Wood has memory. If you cut against the grain or force it into unnatural curves, you introduce stress that will eventually split under load. Viking builders avoided that mistake. They split logs radially rather than sawing them flat, preserving the integrity of the grain. The result was planks that flexed with waves instead of fighting them. In a survival context, this is fundamental. Strength is not rigidity. The longship survived North Atlantic crossings not because it was stiff, but because it was elastic. It moved with the sea. Modern naval architects would later formalize this principle, but Viking builders practiced it intuitively. To modern eyes, clinker construction, overlapping planks fastened with iron rivets, can appear archaic. In reality, it was a deliberate choice suited to the operating environment of the North Sea and Atlantic. The overlapping design distributed stress across the hull. Each plank reinforced the next, creating a layered shell that absorbed impact and flexed under strain. This made the ship lighter than Carvel-built vessels, which relied on edge-joined planks over heavy framing. Lightness meant speed. It also meant shallow draft. Viking longships could cross open ocean, then sail up narrow rivers, then be dragged overland if necessary. This mobility was strategic dynamite. Frankish defences along major rivers were designed for deep-keeled vessels. Over time, European shipbuilders adopted and adapted clinker techniques. The so-called primitive hull form became the backbone of Northern European maritime expansion well into the Middle Ages. The lesson is not that newer is always better. Another overlooked strength of Viking ships was maintainability. A longship was not a delicate masterpiece that required specialized infrastructure. It was modular in a practical sense. Damaged planks could be replaced individually. Rivets could be reclinched. Tarred wool and animal hair sealed seams and could be reapplied during expeditions. Crews carried repair materials because they expected wear. The North Atlantic is unforgiving. Salt, wind, and shifting loads degrade any vessel. Viking survival at sea depended less on avoiding damage and more on managing it. This mindset carries forward into later naval doctrine. Armies and fleets that endure are not those that assume perfect conditions. They are those designed for degradation. The longship reflects a worldview that anticipated hardship and engineered around it. Popular depictions often focus on the striped square sail. It was transformative. By the 8th century, Scandinavian mariners had adopted large woolen sails that allowed sustained travel across open water. Yet, the oars remained integral. A sail gives range, but oars give control. In narrow estuaries, against shifting winds, or during sudden engagements, oars provided maneuverability that sail alone could not. This dual propulsion system was not redundancy. It was resilience. If wind failed, muscle compensated. If exhaustion set in, wind resumed the burden. The ship could function under multiple conditions without external support. In survival terms, this is layered capability. The true strength of Viking ships was strategic unpredictability. A longship could appear where it was least expected, up a river thought secure, along a coast assumed too shallow, or across an open stretch of sea considered impassable. This mobility forced European polities to rethink defense. Fortified bridges, river chains, and coastal watch systems emerged in response. Here we see the long-term consequence of technological asymmetry. When a smaller force possesses superior mobility, larger empires must divert resources to counter it. A longship's strength was not only structural, it was social. Crews were organized around shared responsibility. Because crews understood the ship intimately, how it flexed, how it responded to shifting ballast, they could anticipate strain before failure occurred. Raids dominate popular memory, but trade voyages were more economically transformative. Viking ships connected Scandinavia to the Abbasid Caliphate via river routes through Eastern Europe. The design endured because it served multiple purposes. Warships that only fight tend to disappear when conflicts end. Vessels that trade, explore, and transport settlers leave longer legacies. By the High Middle Ages, shipbuilding evolved. Carvel construction gained prominence in southern waters. Larger cogs and hulks dominated certain trade routes. Yet in northern Europe, clinker-built traditions remained influential. The Viking longship was strong because it was honest about its environment. It did not attempt to dominate the sea through brute mass. It cooperated with it. If you value careful, grounded historical analysis that looks beyond battlefield headlines to the systems underneath, subscribe to the Prepper Historian and share this video. The past is not just a story of who fought whom. It is a record of what endured and why.